There aren't many films about Thanksgiving. It's a holiday often relegated to the realm of sitcoms. This may be because, unlike Christmas, Thanksgiving doesn't have an entire season surrounding it. There's no Thanksgiving time, there's only the one day, so it lacks a wide scope for stories. Furthermore, for many, regardless of saccharine sitcom depictions, Thanksgiving is regarded as an endurance contest rather than a beloved gathering. Preparing the house, food enough to commit gluttony, and making small talk with infrequently encountered relatives, Thanksgiving possesses a burdensome aspect to it. Even television depictions are often an attempt to understand why anyone bothers with the celebration. Yet despite dramatic potential, Hollywood largely ignores the holiday. Although Thanksgivings are celebrated in a variety of countries, Canada, Australia, Liberia, Brazil, and the Philippines to name a few, the holiday I'm talking about is primarily the United States variation. This isn't just a celebration giving thanks for a bountiful harvest. It's part of the mythology of the United States. Perhaps it's fitting, then, that the main Thanksgiving story the U.S. tells isn't even about the first Thanksgiving. That occurred in 1619 at Berkeley 100 in Charles City County, Virginia. However, the celebrated story is that of Pilgrims at Plymouth in 1621. In any event, a film about Thanksgiving in that regard would be distinctly about a United States holiday, thereby potentially limiting its global appeal. Christmas, on the other hand, regardless of cultural variations, is a much more widespread holiday. The sentiment of the season is usually at the core of Christmas stories, while a tale about Thanksgiving is ultimately about family. So the need for that backdrop almost seems unnecessary, unless, that is, if one considers that in the United States, Thanksgiving is largely regarded as an obligation. No matter how much one dislikes their own family, at Thanksgiving it's still expected for everyone to gather together, as if gorging on this one occasion will remedy all the rifts between relatives. The subtle logic here insisting that no one will fight while half-conscious in a food coma. Making matters even more bizarre is that Thanksgiving is generally viewed as National Christmas Kickoff Day. There isn't a suburb where, the weekend after, someone isn't already putting up decorations for Xmas. The day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday, is an annual small-scale riot designed to jumpstart shopping for Giftmas. Perhaps the seemingly unavoidable nature of Thanksgiving and its demand for families to gather, regardless of dysfunction or dislike for one another, fuels this casual disregard for it. That's odd considering what occurred in 1863. That's when William H. Seward, Secretary of State to President Abraham Lincoln, proposed a national Thanksgiving. Specifically, he wanted a nationally recognized date for the holiday. Prior to 1863, any celebration of Thanksgiving was left up to the states. Consequently, each state picked its own date, or whether to observe the holiday at all. Southerners felt no real need to indulge in the day since it was viewed as a primarily northern custom. However, Seward saw potential for the holiday to remind the United States of a shared history, that despite the bloody Civil War still being fought, citizens belonged to one people, a collective identity, as it were. And it may very well be that's why families feel the obligation to gather every Thanksgiving. It's an occasion to refuel any sense of familial connection, a notion emphasized by Friendsgiving, an alternative to the holiday that's grown quite popular in recent years. Whether gathering with family or those we've come to regard as family, Thanksgiving is a chance to remind ourselves of our origins, our differences, and what brings us together. Ideas wonderfully explored in the movie Home for the Holidays. One of very few Thanksgiving-focused films, Home for the Holidays stars Holly Hunter as beleaguered art restorer Claudia Larson. Having recently lost her job, Claudia makes the trek to Baltimore to visit her family for Thanksgiving. Though she possesses little desire to do so, she makes the pilgrimage because there seems to be no other choice. Her time there is fraught with the trials and tribulations of dealing with a family that is odd and quirky in ways that border on dysfunctional. However, the ways in which they are wonderful don't jump out at Claudia. Instead, they slowly creep into mind as she reconnects with them. Although some attachments remain strained by the end, the film ultimately concludes with her rediscovering a sincere appreciation for her family, entirely different from the begrudging love she has at the beginning. The movie is helped along with solid acting by Anne Bancroft and Charles Durning as Claudia's mother and father, plus a superb performance by Robert Downey Jr. as Claudia's impish brother Tommy. Writing about Downey's display, film critic Roger Ebert wrote that it brings out all the complexities of a character who has used a quick wit to keep the world's hurts at arm's length. The persona Downey brings to life is clearly something seen later in his role as Tony Stark. However, what's said of his acting can easily be applied to all the other performers in this dramedy, specifically that they each bring out all the complexities of their respective characters. Even when they behave comedically, the Larsons feel like real people. Perhaps that's just me because I see moments of my own family in various scenes, yet I doubt I'm so unique no one else will be able to have a similar experience watching the movie. Everyone I've ever shared this film with often finds themselves laughing while saying something like, "Holy shit, my parents do the same thing." The film is based on an article by columnist Chris Radant, entitled Home for the Holidays. It appeared in the Boston Phoenix in 1990. It would later be collected in an anthology of Radant's short stories called Home for the Holidays and Other Calamities. The original story seeds a lot of the ideas that are present in the movie. No surprise, since short stories can often be fertile ground for full-length feature films. Philip K. Dick's We Can Remember It For You Wholesale became Total Recall. Rashomon is based on the short story In the Grove by Ryunosuke Akutagawa. Even the holiday classic, A Christmas Story, is merely a short chapter in Gene Shepard's In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash. Like a good adaptation, though, the movie Home for the Holidays expands on concepts in the original piece. This is partly achieved by giving certain characters more depth. In Radant's story, the siblings are hardly engaged with. Director Jodie Foster and screenwriter W.D. Richter therefore saw an opportunity and opening for dramatic potential by expanding those as well as other interactions. Radant's story, after all, is more focused on making it through Thanksgiving, the psychological effort involved in enduring this occasion. Tactics are devised on the plane flight home, yet it all seems to be for naught. As Radant writes, 96 hours jam-packed with television, eating, and being treated like an idiot. How I envy people who enjoy the company of their parents without the aid of pharmaceuticals. She also writes about how, despite her age, every exchange with her parents makes her feel and occasionally mentally revert to being 15 again. It's an idea I think many people can relate to. Jodie Foster certainly seemed to when she decided to helm the film adaptation, and injected elements of her own life into the narrative. Foster and Richter took that central concept of treating Thanksgiving as a gauntlet one strains to survive and expanded on the human element. Characters painted across the silver screen are confronted with the conundrum of how to enjoy each other's company despite feeling little to no desire to be around one another. For instance, Claudia and her sister Joanna have grown into such different people they have no real connection anymore, save for a shared family history. Tommy would rather be in Boston with his new husband Jack. Their parents, meanwhile, are locked in all the old routines the children no longer find charming. Although that latter sentiment is expressed in the film, often to comedic effect, Radant puts it best by writing how one regards parents as geniuses. They are the people with all the answers. Then one day children discover there's a whole reality their parents know nothing about. The world expands, and those once godlike, titanic individuals become so very small. Perhaps it's that disillusionment that makes it hard to be around parents. Once the flaws, failings, and humanity are seen, they can't ever be unseen, let alone ignored. Still, by the end of the film, Claudia begins to remember those things which make her family annoying, that grate against her nerves, are, for better or worse, the things which make them not only human, but lovable. What makes certain elements of her family embarrassing are simply them being themselves, in the shameless way folks are only able to be in the supposed safety of family. These are, after all, good people, who, it can honestly be said, mean well for the most part. At times, Chris Radant's story reads like a litany of complaints about a family's idiosyncrasies, those peculiarities of family members which may seem charming to those who haven't had to experience them daily for decades. Their repetition and the predictability of them making them annoying before they even happen. What's worse, knowing nothing will change. These people will continue to be this way till the end of time. The film manages to take that list of petty grievances and transmutes them through dialogue into depth. Claudia's mother's unrelenting recounting of medical horrors afflicting friends and family becomes an attempt to deal with mortality. Her sister's disdain for her siblings is partly revealed to be frustration that they got to escape to the wider world, while she felt obliged to stay at home to care for their aging parents. Most importantly, this dialogue is often very subtle. It rarely comes across as a hammer blow driving a point home. In this way, the movie expands rather than changes its source material. Changes exist, of course, but most of them are really insignificant. Few of them alter any thematic elements of the story, and many simply add drama to flesh it out. For instance, Claudia now comes from Chicago rather than Boston, and her family lives in Baltimore instead of Pittsburgh. These are largely insignificant details, since the real focus is on the family. Larger changes, such as the siblings' strained relationships, are bigger alterations, but never take over the plot. These provide stepping stones across the broader drama, which is enduring Thanksgiving. It's interesting because the ultimate story isn't a change in characters, so much as a change in perspectives. No one is different as an individual by the film's conclusion. However, their perceptions of one another, particularly the way Claudia looks at her family, are modified. In many ways, that's the truth about family. Our families very rarely change, but our perception and resulting reactions to them do alter over time. I know there are people who sincerely enjoy time with their families. These freaks exist in a world I've never really understood, though I've occasionally envied it. The reverse of that coin contains those who are so estranged from their relatives, no amount of holiday obligation will put them in the same room again. That's partly what makes Home for the Holidays so relatable, because it forces the audience to consider what's so burdensome about Thanksgiving. Why do so many people roll their eyes at the prospect of spending a few hours with the harmlessly embarrassing people we call family? Home for the Holidays is about a family that isn't perfect, though they are far from the melodramatic dysfunction favored by films. There are no tyrannical parents, no soul-scarring abuse, and no volatile addictions destroying anyone's lives. As such, the Larson family is remarkably relatable. Entertaining as it may be to watch the verbal sparring between grown children battling venom-tongued parents, most people don't have that family. Yes, many will find the white suburban Larsons alien as well, but the point is, whatever flaws they possess aren't actually dramatic, which is the truth of most people's lives. Granted, fiction is a chance to go beyond the bounds of reality, yet there's still a charm to something grounded. If Anne Bancroft's portrayal of Adele Larson reminds you of your mother, it triggers memories of her and any introspection that follows. That said, therein may lie the reason why there are so few Thanksgiving-oriented films. There's no magic to the holiday, just people being painfully human. A comedy like Home for the Holidays can explore that, but otherwise, there's enough drama dealing with our real families. We don't need a movie to put us back in that mindset. Rather, we crave something to take us out of the experience. However, that's why Home for the Holidays succeeds. It reminds us that that experience can be quite rewarding. Chris Radant wrote about how, as a child, she saw herself reflected in her parents' eyes with a golden glow. The story concludes with that golden light seen again as she departs. The film ends on a similar note, with Papa Larson reminding Claudia how special she is. Thanksgiving is a chance to renew such an aura. It's also an opportunity to remember we share something with people who aren't like us at all. Regardless of whatever burden it feels like, the holiday can be refreshing. Home for the Holidays was not a huge success in theaters. However, I feel that over time it's gathered a cult following it well deserves. There's an honesty to the Larson family that doesn't always make it on screen or even on page. Whatever exaggerations there may be aren't cartoonish, and their struggles to get along aren't born of anything exceedingly melodramatic. Much of the humor is derived from a sense of similarity, an ability to see oneself reflected in their behavior, yet it's done lovingly and kindly, not as an accusation. This isn't a comedy mocking suburbia, but rather a look at people who are familiar because they may in fact be us. Furthermore, it skates between seriousness and comedy at just the right times. One can understand why the Larsons act in certain ways, getting goofy right after some awkward exchange to deflate the discomfort in a moment. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work and the mess gets worse. Though on occasion, a sigh, then a chuckle, and the bad moments are left behind. Such is life at its best, the darkness dispelled by laughter. Things may not be perfect, but that's no reason not to smile.